The 2014 NFL Draft produced 5 Pro Bowl caliber rushing ends. Well, by rushing ends, I mean either a 3-4 linebacker or a 4-3 true D end, because that's how it works. Anyways, and if you remember the draft, the first overall pick was Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, at South Carolina, he was known for just his unbelievable combine. He measured in at 6'5", 250, so more linebacker than rushing linebacker. But then he ran a 4.5 at that, and now we kind of take that for granted because someone seems to do that every year. But at the time he did it, it was like, no one was doing that. He also was the first pass rusher then selected first overall since Mario Williams, who the Texans also drafted. And, just like Mario Williams has underachieved. Mario Williams was awesome. So is Jadeveon Clowney. But for being number 1 overall, you expect perennial all-star, all-pro every single year. I'm rushing, I'm getting 12 sacks a season at least. Jadeveon Clowney hasn't even broke double digits. And I feel like we just kind of take that for granted. And so take all that into consideration. And remember, I think the reason he's still unsigned is because he asked for $20 million. That's like elite D-line money. Like Aaron Donald, I think, and Khalil Mack are the only 2 above that, which is just like crazy to think that he thinks he's worth 20. You can try whatever you want, but genuinely asking for $20 million when you aren't worth it, I just don't think it's going over well. And again, some people don't think he's overrated. Some people are going to bury me for saying that Jadeveon Clowney's overrated, but I just think when you look at who he was drafted with, it's a great comparison to see that he actually kind of is. The video isn't about me giving my opinions on Jadeveon Clowney. It's me trying to just figure out how much he should be paid, because the fact that he isn't signed I still think is crazy, because in a league where rushers are one of the most important positions, he's not signed. And again, like I said, he's asking for $20 million. But still, I think he'd get signed because he's a premier talent at a premier position. But anyways, I'm just trying to figure out, how when his agent and an NFL GM would sit down, how they would negotiate and kind of look for people in the same ballpark as him as far as stats and, how he's played over his career, and try to just place him. The first thing is that, like I've said just a little earlier, is that pass rushers just get paid. The 2 richest defensive contracts in NFL history are Donald and Mack. And I know Donald isn't a D end. He's technically a tackle, a nose, but he's a rusher. They aren't getting him for his, his just run stuffing capabilities. He's not 400 pounds, 6'2", and just sits in the middle with his arms outstretched. And Khalil Mack, obviously, very similar build to Jadeveon Clowney. Now, Khalil Mack's also, Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time All-Pro. He's unbelievable, so that's not necessarily a fair comparison either. But, again, those 2 rushers are the highest paid defensive players. That just shows something about the position group. If you can rush the quarterback, you will get paid. So he's going to probably be overpaid is what I'm trying to show from this. The fact that the 2 richest contracts ever are rushers means, that's what people want to pay for. So they're going to shell out money for it. So he's going to get probably more than he should just because of principle, just like a quarterback would or a left tackle. So next, I was just trying to sit there and think about how I would exactly evaluate him from a talent perspective, because, you can watch a football player all you want, but at the end of the day, you need to find out a way to put solid, concrete evidence down onto what I think he's worth. So I chose to go with 4 stats, being sacks, because he's an edge rusher, so that's his main job. Tackles for loss, because he's kind of known for being disruptive in the running game because he's got a huge wingspan, so he disrupts a lot of plays in the backfield. And then forced fumbles, because, again, just when you're hitting someone who isn't looking at you, these are things that's going to happen. And also games played versus games started. That's less to compare and more to just kind of show, how active he's been, because he's kind of struggled with injuries his whole career. So, that's something that we can dock him for. Also, I didn't know this when I was looking it up, but I was looking on Pro Football Reference, which is where I got all these stats because they're the best, and his nickname is Doo-Doo. I looked into it a little bit, and it says like that it was something his mom gave him when he was a kid, and it was an article in 2014, and I don't know why we need to attach that to his professional profile. I mean, no one calls him that. So it's just kind of ridiculous that we still associate something so stupid with him. But anyways, back to the whole point of how much you should get paid. So I made a graph, and this graph compares him to the other 4 Pro Bowl caliber players that were drafted in 2014 with him. These being Dee Ford, DeMarcus Lawrence, Khalil Mack, Shaquille Barrett, and obviously Clowney. So the first thing looking at the graph is, sacks, which I said is like probably the most important. He's last in, and it's like, if you're asking for top tier money and your numbers aren't necessarily backing it up, that you're starting off with your main stat as a rusher being the lowest, so not great. So then we'll look at tackles for loss, okay? See, this again, I told you, this is where he's going to take over because he's known for being a run-stopping beast. And also, all these stats taking into consideration, which is something I also just kind of forgot was, he played next to J.J. Watt for 4 years, and he still only got 32 sacks. Which isn't great because, with J.J. Watt, he's getting double-teamed every play. So that means you have one-on-ones. And again, it is against the left tackle, so it's the harder position. But still, you need to be a little more disruptive, in my opinion, to really garner top-tier money, and I just don't think he was. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head during all this. All the other guys played next to okay guys, but, Khalil Mack was the only one he has as Eddie Gold, obviously, on the D-line, and that Bears defense. So he's had a little easier time, but only as of recent. He's only been there 2 years. He was at Oakland with nobody for years when he won even Defensive Player of the Year. So then you have forced fumbles. And again, not huge, but you look at his sacks and you kind of see it. There's almost like a direct correlation between how many sacks you have and how many forced fumbles you have, except for Shaquille Barrett, and that's because, he had that phenomenal season with Tampa last season where he led the league in sacks and got absolutely no recognition for it. But thankfully, the Bucs franchise tagged him, and I'm hoping he can prove himself and make a whole lot of money because he was super fun to watch. So then we have games started versus played, and, I said this is where, it's going to hurt him a bit because he's played the least amount of games. Now, he has started more than Dee Ford and DeMarcus Lawrence and Shaquille Barrett. But again, these guys got to a point where they weren't drafted as, number 1 overall picks. When you're the number 1 overall pick, in my eyes, you should start right away and be a phenom. Not necessarily a phenom, but you should start right away and then, be good. Jadeveon and Clowney only played 1 game his rookie season. And he just, again, you get drafted number 1 overall, and then you're being outshone by all these guys who were drafted way after you, but you think you deserve the same amount of money they deserve? I just don't 100% understand. Maybe making it around the same as Shaquille or Dee Ford, but, you're not worth $20 million. You just aren't. So going down to, how much everyone else is making. So DeMarcus Lawrence obviously signed that huge contract finally of 5-year, $105 million. So, 21 a year, $21 million. So that's what he wants. But again, DeMarcus Lawrence across the board, except for tackles for loss, had better stats than him. So I don't think that's justified. And also, it's the Cowboys. They overpay everyone. Dak's asking for basically the whole team salary cap, and it's in the ballpark still because the Cowboys. Then you have Dee Ford with 5-year, $85 million, so a lot more modest. That puts him around $15 million, $15.8 million per year, which again, I think is the ballpark of where he should start being paid. Khalil Mack, we aren't even going to talk about. He makes $26 million a year. He's the best pass rusher, edge rusher in football, so he deserves all that money. Shaquille Barrett making that 15.8 again. So starting to see a trend. All the guys in the similar stat ballpark are making the same amount of money. And then obviously him. He's a question mark. He hasn't signed anywhere, but he wants $20 million for some reason. and which he just shouldn't get. So, again, I'm going to say $16 million to $17 million if they want to overpay him. Or sign a 1-year prove-it deal, Joe Flacco style, prove that you think you're worth more money, and then, yeah. So, yeah, again, looking at everything we've looked at, I think he's worth 16 to 17 million, which I think he's played according to that standard. When you look at all the guys around him's contracts, it would place him at around, top 10 for edge rushers, and I definitely don't think he's worth, that top. If he gets that 20 million, he will be the 5th highest edge rusher in the league under Chandler Jones, who has the most sacks over the last 3 seasons. DeMarcus Lawrence, who we already went over, has started less games than him and still has more sacks, forced fumbles, and games overall played in. Von Miller, who's a Super Bowl MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year, and one of the most consistent edge rushers in football, and Khalil Mack, who is an absolute monster of a man who does about everything you can on a football field. So I think we can all see he's definitely not worth that. But again, you place him at $16 million. He's around Dee Ford, Bud Dupree, Shaquille Barrett, Melvin Ingram, and Trey Flowers, who I all think are very good ballpark estimates for where he should be. So I'm just dead set. I think if I'm paying Jadeveon Clowney, I'm giving him 16, 17 million. That's it. That's the end of the story.